You're listening to Human Factors Tech, the show that dives beneath the surface of enterprise transformation. Hosted by Jared Degnan, each episode explores the hidden drivers behind real change, not just the how, but the why. Because in the world of big systems and bigger stakes, it's not just about the tech, it's about the people who make it work. This is Human Factors Tech.
Welcome back to Human Factors Tech. I'm Jared Degnan. Today, the topic is AI and ethics, and I am blessed to be joined by one of the preeminent AI ethicists out there, Savneet Singh. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad to be here.
Great. So why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself and kind of how you came into the world of AI ethics?
Yes, so like you said, my name is Savneet Singh, and the story goes back a little bit further. Year and a half ago or something, I was just reading something around how the bad actors used AI to compromise small girls, not even teenager girls, like the little girls, the kids, babies, right? Use their pictures and something to create something very, very bad. I won't say the word. That was like a little bit of awakening. Couldn't sleep that night because I was like, I mean, this is like the AI is so good. It can take us. It can take us to the next kind of era, and people are using it, like bad actors are using it not the right way. So what can be done about it, and who is talking about it, and what can I do? So all those questions is what I started to kind of explore. I kind of started studying, did bunch of courses, read, write, research papers, go to conference talks, and all the good stuff. So yeah, but that was my story and my rationale or motivation behind being in this space.
hmm Now, you're not just a fly-by-night interest in this, though. You're a professor, correct?
Yes, I teach at well, not professor, I guess. I teach at Emory, Ethics of AI, Responsible AI, the same course, and I also teach at California State University, same course but for different audience. At university, I teach students, whereas at Cal State, it will be exec education, responsible AI, change management around AI, how to set up AI, all of that good stuff. And I work for Google Trust and Safety team. I specifically work for YouTube, and whatever I say today, none of my employers, like none of this represents their opinion. This is my personal opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that it's really interesting because one of the things I love about your story is that it's not just something that you're an expert in. It's not something that you teach, but it's something that's deeply personal to you. And I think that underpins such an amazing arc. And for those of us who decide to get into tech, there's tech for tech's sake, and then there's tech for the greater good. And I think you're really a great example of tech for the greater good, and that's really exciting. So let's talk a little bit about AI ethics, and in particular the utilization of AI, because something I think something that we're seeing a lot of. We're seeing a lot of headlines right now about people losing their jobs. Hundreds of thousands of jobs are being, I wouldn't say lost, because they're not really being lost. They're being repurposed, really. But AI is substantially changing the landscape for job seekers out there. But for those of us who are in jobs as well, whether you're taking a new job or you're in an existing one, AI is still impacting you, and you're facing this choice of you're either adopting AI tools or you're going to fall behind. And that, of course, presents a lot of pressure. And whenever pressure exists, people are bound to push the boundaries of what they can do. Now, if you work for a tech forward and AI forward company, you will be provided tools, and you will be provided training. However, there is always that desire to get ahead. So I'd like to kind of get some of your perspectives on, maybe let's start with the state of personal ethics within AI? And I start with that very specifically because I feel like it's a budding, it's just now starting. So maybe like give us your 2 cents on that.
Yeah, so personal ethics in in the sense of as in an age of like, so I think there are two parts to that. What are personal ethics and what does it mean, like in today's world, especially when we are moving towards more and more towards emerging technologies. um I My personal preference sometimes is like to use emerging technologies because it's much wider. But like, let's just use AI for now. I think how we always, as human beings, or whenever we formed the society, we always followed some kind of, rules, regulations, ethics, morality, and all the good stuff. And those things are, I wouldn't say changing, maybe updating or being seen in different shape and form, because now we are talking about AI. So this is very interesting. I was reading somewhere how people are saying that AI should be personified, like we have corporations, or for that matter, ship is a person. In some countries, whales, I think whales are considered as person. So how do we personify AI or not personify? Right, that kind of debate is going on. That's a separate thing. But I just want to say that this all will shape how we work with AI tools, AI systems, or any organization, or any kind of daily engagement things. How do we work with them will require a deeper look into that. And in even stepping back and looking into that landscape, how does it align with my values, my ethics, and what is this system doing? So I think as human beings and as human society, we need to step back and start thinking about that. I'm not talking about it's right or wrong or anything of that sort. Just start thinking about how they integrate or how they work, how these technologies and human beings or human society will work together.
Hmm. And I think that's a really interesting point because ethics starts with you personally. And a
Mhm.
lot of people don't have formal training in ethics. And of course, ethics is about shades of gray. It's not, there's not a stark right or wrong. And I'll give you a great example because I do want you to react to this. Let's just take, ChatGPT, Claude, etc. It used to be that maybe a couple months ago, you could put something into AI, take it out, ask it to write an email, and you could copy and paste it. And, arguably, if the topic's not too complicated, you come off looking very, very good. However, just like any other technology, you mentioned video, you mentioned deep fakes. People who are experienced in this area start to be able to pick up on those cues. And it's almost like an uncanny valley sort of situation where our perception gets realer and we're able to recognize what's going on. Um, I have seen people share prompts for ChatGPT instructions that are like remove the M dash because the M dash is a classic tell of AI. I mean, who uses M dash besides like AP stylists? Um, to me, that's interesting because let's say that I use AI to write an email and it's my topic areas, but it's infilled by the expertise of ChatGPT. I check it; it looks okay to me. How much am I on the hook to disclose that email? We're just using that one use case. That email was written partially with ChatGPT. Do I have a responsibility to do that?
Yeah, so that is a really, really good question. So I think these things are, how to say, the very infancy stage. People have not started thinking about these yet, which we should. So it is interesting that you bring it up. Just I think a week ago or so, I just wrote an article, and the title is "Your Call is Being Recorded Isn't Enough Anymore." So I'll just talk briefly about that, and I'll send the link to the article so that you can read it. So what happened that, somebody in California kind of, went to the court saying that when I was talking on the phone, this disclaimer was given, your call is being recorded, but then they used my voice and my data to train their AI system, and that AI system was owned by a third party, right? So that's where it begins, that as consumers we need to know that, but that's the consumer side of that. But like, writing an email, definitely, there are. So yeah, allow me to define something, if yeah. So I just wanted to chat a little bit about, data privacy and what do we even mean by that, right? So there is this great tech philosopher, Reed Blackman. I just love what he says. So he defines the data collection or data surveillance or data privacy um, at, at four levels, basically. So one level one is your data is being collected, but it's never used or accessed, right? The second is the data is collected, it is anonymized, and it is used like as a chunk, like as a huge thing to train something to draw inferences. That's level two. And then third one is the data is collected, it is aggregated, and probably somebody sees my name, but that's it. And then the next level is where they see my name and do something with it, like my PHI or something, right? And the
Mm.
most critical level is the surveillance, where they see my name and they do something bad or good, right? So those are the different categories, and I think it is really important for us to define where all of this brings in the ethical issues, the harms, right? um so basically, here is a simple example. For example, I sent my calendar invite to you so that you can, kind of access my calendar and book the meeting. So now you have access to my calendar. I mean, that's okay. So that's no harm. But then you could also somehow my sharing setting was messed up, and you could see that, okay. And you made a note, right? You made a note. Sav is available Monday mornings and Friday afternoons, and you note it down on a paper. So that data is about me, but that's not my data, right? Because you wrote it down. So we need to have a distinction. I'm by no means I'm saying that we shouldn't have privacy, but I'm just trying for our listeners to kind of gauge that, understand this complexity, right? So that data that you wrote on the piece of the paper is about me, but that's not my data, right? And then my calendar setting was messed up. Now you could see that Savneet is not here this week she's here, next week she's traveling to, I don't know, Boston, right? So now you make a note of that. Still harmless, right? But if somebody, and then somebody looks at that and they know where I live and what I do, they can do all kind of bad things when I'm not here. So that's where we are going with this. That's when it comes to the disclosure. What do we want to do, in what kind of scenarios, where we want to, what is the impact, the visibility and autonomy in any of these situations? If there is an impact that alters the outcomes, for example, AI generated performance reviews, right?
Mm.
That somebody who I do, they use it and I do not know about that. So quote unquote do not know about, I'm not told about that, right? The visibility that could have, maybe we use the chats, the office chats like Slack or things of that nature all the time. And if the company is using the sentiments around that in the personal channels, you and I are chatting and I'm really frustrated, and that is being used against me, that's those kind of things is not, it's not, that's definitely need to have a disclosure. And then autonomy, right? It reduces any system that reduces the control, my control as an individual over the sensitive decisions. For example, productivity. So, for example, my work phone, right? My company can track where I am right now. They can, yes, but they are maybe not. They need to have my consent that they can use that data to make decisions about me. Autonomy, right? So three things: impact, visibility, and autonomy. Wherever these three things are involved, we definitely need disclosures.
Yeah, you bring up two really interesting ideas that kind of harken back to shades of things that have happened previously in tech. And there was this, some of us started out in social media when like social media was in its infancy, and there was a website called pleaserobme.com. And it was literally exactly what you just said. It connected your Instagram to, I think, a Facebook or something. No, sorry, it was Foursquare. It was Foursquare. So when you checked in someplace else that wasn't your house, it would tell whether or not you were not home. And it wasn't meant to be malicious. It was meant to show the vulnerabilities that we have. And I think that what you're doing is you are you are showing how this data can be used in different ways. And I love the four. I love the four levels, and I love the way you just explained your level of disclosure. The second thing that it kind of reminds me of is when email started to appear on work phones, we had those little disclaimers that said, please excuse the typos because I'm on mobile. I'm almost thinking like that's I've never seen that before in emails, but
Uh-huh.
it's like it almost feels like, hey, this email might have been partially created with AI. Please excuse the M dashes, for lack of a better term. So yeah, it I love the idea around judging risk, and in particular, you talked about the utilization of PHI. For those of listeners who don't already know, PHI is personal health information. It almost sounds like you're advocating for, just like we do data training.
Yes.
We have a lot of training around PDI, personal identification, personal PII, personal
Yeah, yeah.
identification information, and then personal health information is kind of like one step further. You're almost advocating, it sounds like, for that kind of training for AI, because being you need to be able to understand the risk that your AI is posing. Is am I getting that right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think training definitely is step one. AI literacy, who is using. So it also goes back to all the data governance, and so I like to call it the data supply chain. So we are not focusing on what you see on your screen or what you interact with, just the back of it, right? The how it's data collected, how it's parsed, and all the good stuff. How training is done, how AI systems are trained, and all the good stuff. So that whole supply chain of data or AI, however you want to call that, that needs to be monitored, if not regulated. So that's what I think. But just going back to what you said, um, so training for sure. But then also, like you said, on your phone, people would say, "I'm typing on my phone. Just ignore the typos and whatnot." So that's like something similar to that would be like AI disclosure labels, where we say AI assisted and AI
Mhm.
generated. And we can talk about that a little later, like in another session, how AI assisted and AI generated are different and how it affects our day-to-day work, our cognitive ability and whatnot, right? So AI disclosure and then AI privacy zone. So like I mentioned, any space or tool, like I said, we use um, chats all the time, right? Um, Even the personal ones, right? Which ones would be monitored? Which ones are? What are the spaces those we really do not want AI? For example, one-on-one meetings. I don't know, HR discussions, the promo discussions. So how do we label and categorize them all? And definitely going back to how do we teach teams to do that? Are they scraping personal data? What are they doing with that data? And then there are ways to, and we can talk about that data minimization and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, you're on the point.
Okay. So it almost feels like it comes down to a decision of I can versus I should. It's not only, I think you're making an amazing point, because when you are developing AI models, obviously there's a whole world of ethical implications around that. But then on the personal level, whether or not I should use information, well, number one, I'm going to be held liable for the information that I provide. So the other day, I was working on actually a vibe coding project, and I was working with my teams, and there are risks to vibe coding code. The developers are like, I don't want AI generated code just spit out and used because it's not going to be stable. And so I'm like, okay, well, how do I sandbox this in a way that's appropriate? So I did some research, and I used AI partially to come up with a list of security guidelines that I wanted the CSO of my company to ratify for this particular project. But that list was created by AI. So there's two different risk factors to that. Number one, do I know that AI is actually working for my benefit and it's not trying to fool me? We take that for granted a lot. And then number two, I take the risk on that this is a complete list, that I'm presenting myself as an AI expert. And to me, in that email, I had to disclose, like, listen, I'm not a security expert. Here are the things that I think will work based on my research. Please have your team back check it. And I don't necessarily have to say, like, listen, I generated this list with AI, because I think that everybody is generating these lists with AI these days. Um, so talk to me a little bit about, do you have your own code of ethics as it relates to your use of AI in your profession, in your personal communications, etc.?
Yes, for sure. What am I doing with AI and what I'm not? Definitely yes. And when I teach, I already knew, that students are going to use AI, and I never said don't use it, because that would be like, in like if you go 100 years back or something, that would be like don't ride in a bus or don't ride in a car, just ride on the horse. So it's like saying that. But I just made my projects um um complex enough, not difficult, complex enough that they have to put their brains in. Um, that's exactly what I was saying. That the recent study by Stanford shows that how these three groups, where one group was only using AI to generate an essay, the second group used AI as well as the human brain, and the third group was only using human brain. Um, so the best output was the middle one, where machine, the technology, and human brain worked together. So that is the caveat, right? You create something and then you just use it, like, to fact not to kind of polish it, right?
Hmm.
um, or use it as a brainstorm partner.
Hmm.
This is what I'm thinking, what do you think? And then you get the ideas, you write your own, you just go back, and then I would say do not validate, because human brain is much more powerful and complex than any artificial AI system as of now. So just kind of, I usually ask that, does it make sense? Does it flow well? Are the ideas, are like organized well? Because sometimes I struggle with organization of my ideas. What should come first, second, and third? So I use that. So that's my one of the things. I start here with my brain. I would compile my ideas, I would write whatever I could, and then I go back and then I would ask it to read it for me and suggest anything, those kind of things. Um, but definitely, tools. So, for example, tools can be used for anything. We said that, they can be used for misinformation, deepfakes, and whatnot. Where do we draw that line where it is just you're using an app on Instagram to create an avatar, right? So that's just naive, not naive like harmless, right? But how when you get into that deep fake process where you are exploring it, exploiting it for the wrong reasons. So that's where personal ethics come in, and how do I keep myself involved and informed about all of these issues, environmental, the sustainability, and all of this stuff. So I think it's a bigger landscape, like both breadth and depth of that. But it's I'm like, not very happy to say that not many people are thinking about it. They just use chat gpt without even thinking that, to your point, if it's correct or not. And hallucinations are real. um and it has kind of tendency, AI systems have tendency to make up their own information. I have been kind of, victim of that a couple of times before I realized, oh, it just said something. It doesn't even exist. The CNN article, it never happened. So those kind of things, it's like, it's not, we need to be more towards AI literacy for sure.
Yeah. I mean, final kind of thoughts here, because I just want to be mindful of time. Are you familiar with this concept of absolute mode for ChatGPT?
Uh,
Okay, so we're gonna end in this. We're gonna end with your reaction to this, because I think it's a really interesting component, particularly with what you just mentioned. But then most likely this is going to be, I feel like we're going to have lots of conversations going down the line on different topics. So absolute mode is this trend where you give instructions, particularly to ChatGPT, to say, don't make things up, don't
mhm.
try to reaffirm my thought process, validate it, not validate it, challenge it. It's basically saying take out all of this embedded affirmation, like a
Yeah.
lot of chat gpt, and there's been a lot around like 4.0 in particular about how it's meant to be flattered, it's meant to flatter you. And of course there are all of these articles about people who try to who have actually engaged in self-harm
Yes.
because of the what has occurred with chat gpt. But yeah, I'm interested in kind of knowing from, if you are a student or a new entry into the workforce, what's some of the advice that you would provide with regards to AI ethics?
So definitely. So that's called glazing. Another concept that I'm very passionate about is anthropomorphism. So that's they two go along with each other. But yeah, if you're new or just a student, I think definitely, like what you and I discussed, have your own ethics, own values. People say 5 top values. I stick to 3 or maybe even 2 values. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm not going to do, or whatever works for you. Like 2 top values that you abide by. And secondly, fact check and do not kind of over rely on any kind of AI systems. And I would just say that it's not only about Gen AI; it's much more than it's much bigger. Like the home systems, right? You have your app to turn off the oven just on your phone. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong, but just this over reliance on these technologies. When we are driving, we are looking at the road, but we are relying on the map. Sometimes our eyes and our brain work faster than the maps, right? So where do you draw the boundaries where you step in and then take the control, and it's not human in the loop, it's human in the control, right? So that kind of sense. And one thing I would definitely say is that do not let machine control you. You are the machine is there for you, you are not there for it. So just take that control, just be the human being in control. Most of the situations, not applicable everywhere though. That's a disclaimer. But that would be my 2 cents, I guess.
Great. Savneet Singh, AI ethicist, professor, and a professional expert on this. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate you. And my guess is that this is not going to be the last time we talk to you.
Definitely, yes, thank you so much, glad to be here.
Thanks for listening to Human Factors Tech. If this conversation resonated with you, please follow, share, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And for more stories on the people powering enterprise transformation, visit humanfactorstech.com.